Hi, before I get into it, I'm just going to make one quick plea. I'm going to put a link down below to the Football Content Awards nomination form. If you fancy nominating either Imagine Not Being Leeds or The Leeds View, both of the channels I absolutely love, and I've seen pushing for nominations. They absolutely deserve it, and hopefully another Leeds channel can win a Football Content Award this year. Anyway, video starts now. Cool. Now, we all know that Leeds United are trying to get a lot of their business done early in this transfer window. After all, if we weren't, we wouldn't have signed Harry Wilson already. We wouldn't have two bids already in for Shea Charles, and we wouldn't already be linked with a range of other players. But it's very rare that you'll have a transfer target that has a specific date by which they are likely to move. But that seems to be the case with Shea Charles, and I will get into that in a minute's time. But before I do so, I just thought I'd cover off another story that came out yesterday. Sorry, I'm losing track of days. It's currently 3:28 in the morning because I've just been working the Cape Verde match. It's specifically on Zetterstrom, specifically Jakob Vidal Zetterstrom, there we go, who is currently at Derby County, a goalkeeper that is also a Swedish international, played for Sweden yesterday or the day before in the World Cup, and Leeds United are now reportedly linked to him via Fabrizio Romano. Leeds have apparently made contact with Derby, and he's a fairly solid goalkeeper. However, he's 27 years of age, so it's not exactly the sort of territory of goalkeeper that you look at if you want to develop someone behind another goalkeeper, which is a little bit interesting. For me, this sort of screams agent talk. There isn't anything hugely secure around it outside of a Fabrizio Romano tweet, so it could be a case of an agent has approached him saying, look, we've had a little chat with them, we've had a little chat with them, can we get the interest out? I don't want to be at Derby anymore, which is fair enough. Who particularly wants to spend that long at Derby? But there are two cases in which that does make sense that I don't think are necessarily the reality that we're in, which would be if Darlow leaves, we could do with someone to compete with Lucas Perry for that starting berth. And at the same time, if Perry leaves, we could do with someone behind Carl Darlow to sort of bring up and hopefully develop and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, Zetterstrom, I don't think there's a ton in it, but I thought I'd cover it off before the main story of Shay Charles. And also, if you're new here, just subscribe to the channel. That'd be quite nice. Anyway, Shay Charles. Leeds United, a few days ago, submitted a £20 million bid for Shea Charles. There was a little bit of conversation around what this bid exactly looked like. It was either £20 million with add-ons as part of the £20 million or £20 million plus add-ons. Bit confusing. However, yesterday it was reported by the Daily Mail, who initially reported this story in the first place and were then corroborated by a load of other people, that Leeds have submitted another bid of up to £25 million, which could include add-ons. Again, we're not sure about the structure of it. However, there are a couple of little interesting details around sort of how it's being reported, because there's some rumours that Southampton will want £30 million as opposed to £25 million. I think that's a little bit on the high side, and the word is that Leeds United will also see that as being a bit on the high side, with some stating that Leeds' ceiling in this negotiation is set to be about 25 million quid. Now, hold on, I'm going to stop the recording. I badly need to sneeze. Okay, so we are like an hour later. Babies are great fun. So where were we? Leeds £25 million bid. Southampton might want 30, but there's a very, 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 very firm time frame in which Southampton can actually get this deal done if they're going to get a deal done at all. I'm just going to hop over to a graph to explain why that is. So, in any given season, a club will start with effectively the idea that they're going to get so much TV money. So, in 24-25, which is the season that is on the far left, Southampton came into it knowing that they're going to get this much TV money, which is about £100 million because they're in the Premier League. So they spend a bunch of it on players, which takes it down a bunch. And then from that point, they've got wages and stuff like that, which mean that it gradually declines and declines and declines and declines. This is what I'm going to call a sort of line of acceptable losses. So in reality, I've done that line a little bit too steep. So it's more of a case of spend this much on players, cool. And then the sort of wage costs take you to within acceptable losses, which is fine. Now, the acceptable losses shrink fairly significantly when you're in the Championship, which Southampton were in 25-26. Which means, sure, you're going to sell a few players, brilliant, that's fine, but you're not going to sell as many players as your Premier League revenue. But you're also going to have to sign some players to make sure you stay in the Championship, so that comes down a little bit again. And then you've still got player wages, which means that with the player wages being about the same, if I can get the line right. Hang on. So sign some players, player wages about the same, unless you're quite lucky. You drop below that acceptable losses threshold. And if you're below this threshold here, then there's a pretty big chance that the EFL are going to come for you and come for you hard. As we learned fairly significantly with the Leicester case, it can lead to a very quick trip down to League One. Now, Southampton sort of assumed that they would be back in the Premier League, that their spying and cheating will get them back up here in terms of revenues. However, slight issue with that is the baby's awake again. But a slight issue with that is the fact that they didn't, which means that they're back down here again. Which means that all of a sudden, instead of having this sort of level of cash in the bank, which is within the acceptable losses, they are down here. They're potentially even lower because they have like fines and stuff to pay. Which means that they have a sale to make before the 26-27 financial period, which comes on the 30th of June. So in essence, if there is a sale to be made, if Southampton want to be within PSR guidelines, they need to be within this range in the next 3 days, which says quite a lot for the potential Shea Charles case. Specifically, that the reason it's speeding up right now is a very significant one, and that is the fact that, well, they kind of need to get that money in. Things are speeding up because Leeds are aware that at the end of the day, Southampton need cash, and at the end of the day, Shea Charles is a very, very good asset. He's a midfielder that's played a hell of a lot of football, over 100 senior appearances, and every single one of these appearances has made him a better player. And I will be honest, Shea Charles is one of those players that was going to be in the Premier League no matter what this season. Question is who he did it for, and it's not going to be Southampton, and it's increasingly looking like it's going to be Leeds United. Now, I don't know if Southampton need the number to be £30 million. I don't know if they need it to be 25. I don't know what their losses look like. No one does until next April when their financial balance sheet will come out. What we do know is that in terms of players that are rumoured to leave Southampton in this window, the only player that's got any significant noise behind them right now is Shay Charles. Juan Larios, there's been a little bit of chat. Fine. I don't know if he's turned that into a move or not, but there is clear evidence that Southampton needs something to happen. And at the end of the day, it's looking like that's going to be Shea Charles, and that will benefit Leeds hugely because he is a good midfielder that can probably step in the Premier League next season. Maybe not start. Oh, hello. But at least play a fairly big role. I'm gonna wrap up in a moment when Girlie's calmed down again. 1 second. Okay, so another decent chunk of time later, she's finally down again. To sum up, we have learned in recent days that a English central midfielder that's got a decent bit of talent and a decent bit of potential around them can be worth an absolute bomb. Elliot Anderson, 116 or 123 million pounds. It was one of the two, I think, to Manchester City. Leeds United have a hell of a lot to gain by signing Shea Charles, who is a midfielder with a hell of a lot of potential. I'm not saying Elliot Anderson level potential, but he's got a big future ahead of him, and we can be a part of that. At the same time, Southampton win because they get a sale on their books by the 30th of June, which will be absolutely fantastic for them. We don't have a particular problem with finances around that because we came significantly higher in the league than we expected to, which means more prize money, which means more money to invest, which is another positive. And in addition to all of that, Shea Charles himself benefits from playing in the Premier League. Ultimately, this is a move that makes a lot of sense, and it makes a lot of sense for it to be done by the 30th of June. 3 days. Or 4, I guess, because it could be announced the next day. I don't know, as long as the paperwork's done the day of. But ultimately, it's one that makes sense, and it's one that I hope Leeds United get done at this point, because it increases the level of that midfield, and it invites a significant challenge to whoever we don't sell in that midfield to say, look, this is the level that we're working at now. You need to keep up, which is a very nice message for us to send. Anyway, before I end, by the way, I'm just going to explain why the video was so broken up. I've made the conscious decision to not put the baby on camera or name the baby because I'll be honest, it's her decision to make as to whether or not she wants to be in YouTube videos, and she can't make that decision right now. So I'm just sort of giving her that freedom. So to sum up, babies are good. Shea Charles, I believe, probably coming to Leeds. I believe probably before the 30th of June. I think the Zetterstrom thing is probably a load of nothing, but we'll find out. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, pop a like on it, subscribe, become a channel member if you fancy. You get videos as soon as I've recorded them, which in this case is 4:47 in the morning. Oh dear. And yeah, hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all later. Toodaloo.